Ever been in that really frustrating spot where, your English is technically great. Like, you ace the grammar tests. Your vocab is huge, maybe even rivals a native speaker. But when you try to have a real conversation, especially a fast one, it just feels like your brain's, I don't know, running some clunky old program.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You hear the English, right? And your mind kind of snaps back to your first language. You figure out this brilliant reply in your head, and then comes that slow, sometimes kind of awkward bit of translating it all back into English.
And by the time you actually say it, the moment's gone.
Yeah.
Or maybe the sentence just feels a bit, stiff, a little unnatural.
It's interesting, that experience, because it really highlights a key thing for advanced learners. Knowing a language isn't quite the same as truly operating within it.
Right.
Think of it like, okay, you've got this amazing cutting-edge piece of software, all the bells and whistles, but you're trying to run it on an old emulator that has to constantly interpret every single command. It bogs things down.
Exactly. That internal translator, that's the emulator we need to bypass. So, welcome to this deep dive. We're going to tackle the heart of this problem. Training your brain, essentially, to think directly in English.
Yeah.
Think of it as the key, maybe the secret sauce, to unlocking that real, effortless C1 fluency. Moving from just knowing English to actually, thinking in it when you need to.
And importantly, this isn't about forgetting your first language or anything.
But not at all.
It's more about developing that mental flexibility, that agility, the ability to kind of switch modes and really live in English when you're using it.
And when you look at how language learning works, that shift in processing, it's often what separates learners who are, really competent from those who just sound and feel almost native.
Right. It's skipping that middle step. It's engaging directly.
So in this deep dive, we're really going to dig into why making this mental leap is so important. Like, what are the actual cognitive upsides? We'll help you take a good, honest look at your own mental habits. See how much you might still be leaning on that translation crutch.
That's crucial, that self-awareness step.
And most importantly, we're going to give you really practical, actionable things you can start doing, like right away, to actually rewire those pathways and get your brain thinking directly in English. Sound good?
Absolutely. Let's do it. So I guess the big question is, why bother? Why is this move from translating to thinking directly so, vital if you really want to hit that advanced level? Let's explore the cognitive side of it.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why put in all this effort to retrain your brain? Well, honestly, the cognitive payoff for your fluency is huge. First off, that internal translation step. It's a massive bottleneck in your communication.
Yeah, it really is.
English comes in, gets processed through your L1, then translated back out. It creates that delay, that little mental hiccup we all recognize. It's why responses can feel slow, even when you know exactly what you want to say. Thinking directly in English. It just cuts out those extra steps. You get a much faster, more direct flow from understanding to actually speaking. Think about navigating a city with a direct map versus constantly having to ask someone to translate directions at every single corner.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just about speed, is it? It's also about our mental resources.
Yeah.
You hear the term cognitive load, right?
Right, like how much your brain is juggling at once.
Exactly. The amount of mental effort your working memory is using and translation.
Yeah.
It's incredibly demanding. You're trying to understand the English, okay, then recall the equivalent in your L1, then find the right English words, put them together grammatically.
And still pay attention to the actual conversation, like who's talking, their body language, all that stuff.
Precisely. It's a lot of mental juggling.
Yeah.
And when your working memory gets overloaded like that, what happens? Your brain tends to default to simpler language,
Yeah. You make more mistakes too.
You make more mistakes, and your overall fluency just takes a hit. It feels effortful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, okay, when you start thinking in English, you free up all that mental bandwidth, right?
Totally.
Your brain isn't tied up playing translator. It can actually focus on the more complex stuff, the nuances, expressing trickier ideas, really connecting with the person you're talking to. It's a real game changer for effective communication.
This ties directly into something that frustrates a lot of learners. L1 interference.
Yeah, where bits of your native language sneak in.
Exactly. And it's not just accent. It can be your word order, maybe, putting adjectives after nouns if your language does that.
Or idioms, using idioms that don't translate.
Definitely idioms, prepositions, even basic sentence structure. You might find yourself trying to directly translate a saying from your first language, and it just sounds well, really strange in English, or completely meaningless.
Oh, we've all heard those, haven't we? Those literal translations that just make you kind of tilt your head.
Right. And the thing is, thinking in your first language right before you speak English actually reinforces those L1 patterns. Your brain's already primed to work that way.
Makes sense.
But when you make the switch, think directly in English, you start to solidify the natural English patterns. Those L1 intrusions become less likely over time.
Okay, so it helps avoid those awkward phrasings.
Precisely. And this brings us to another really crucial benefit: building automaticity.
Automaticity?
Yeah.
Doing things automatically.
Yeah, exactly. Performing tasks without having to consciously think about every step. Like driving for experienced drivers, right?
Yeah.
You don't consciously decide, okay, now clutch, now gear shift.
Well, it just happened.
It just happens. Fluent speaking works the same way. You want to be able to grab words and grammar structures without that conscious step-by-step construction process.
And thinking directly in English helps build that.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
Because you're directly accessing English words and grammar, you're strengthening those specific neural pathways in your brain, like exercising a muscle. They get stronger with use.
Yeah.
Translation, by its nature, is conscious. It's step by step. It actually gets in the way of developing that automatic recall. Remember feeling like your words are coming out too late?
Yeah, definitely.
Automaticity is the antidote to that. Making word retrieval and grammar happen instantly without you having to actively think about it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Faster, less effort.
And finally, let's not forget the cultural dimension.
Ah, good point.
Language and culture are so deeply intertwined, aren't they? The way people structure arguments, how they show politeness, even their sense of humor. It's all tangled up with the language itself.
Yeah, humor definitely doesn't translate well usually.
Right. So when you think in English, you start to absorb these more subtle aspects of the language and the culture behind it. You develop a better feel, sort of an intuition for what sounds natural, what's appropriate in different situations.
Which is super important at the C1 level, right?
Yeah.
When you want to get beyond just being understood to like really conveying subtle meaning or understanding jokes.
Exactly. That internalization of cultural nuance, it's a huge part of sounding more natural and authentic. It's moving beyond just technically correct grammar to having a real feel for English.
Okay, so it's pretty clear then. Thinking in English isn't just some, neat trick for advanced learners. It's a fundamental cognitive shift.
Yeah.
It unlocks faster, more natural, way more effective communication. It cuts down the mental strain, boosts your speed, improves accuracy based on actual English patterns, builds that crucial automaticity.
And helps you connect with the cultural vibe of the language, too.
Okay, so we get why it's important. Now, the potentially tricky part. How can you tell if you are still mostly translating in your head? Time for a little internal audit.
Right. This requires some honest self-reflection. Really trying to observe what's going on inside your mind when you're using English.
Okay, so ask yourself these questions. Like, when someone speaks to you in English, do you often find yourself mentally kind of shadowing their words, repeating them silently with the L1 equivalent?
Mm-hmm. Or, before you speak, do you usually build the entire sentence in your first language first, and then sort of translate it piece by piece into English?
What about pausing mid-conversation? Do you often stop because you're mentally scanning your L1 for a word and then trying to find the English version?
Yeah, that's a big clue. And think about that little gap, that pause between understanding someone and actually replying. What's filling that space in your head? Is it L1 thoughts and planning, or are you already starting to form the response in English?
And finally, do you ever catch yourself wanting to use like a great idiom or proverb from your own language?
Oh, yeah.
And you start trying to translate it directly into English, only to realize halfway through, it's going to sound totally bizarre.
Yeah.
Like maybe trying to literally translate something like pulling someone's leg. The result could be interesting, depending on your L1.
We've all been tempted. If you found yourself nodding yes to several of those, hey, don't worry. It's a really, really common stage, even for very advanced learners.
It's really normal.
It's just that ingrained habit your brain built up when you were first learning. The key now is to consciously work on setting a new default.
This reminds me of a story about Maria, a super smart software architect from Brazil. Her English on paper and even spoken was technically fantastic, easily C1.
Okay.
But in these big international team meetings, all in English, she felt her contributions were slow, less impactful than she wanted. She knew all the technical terms, no problem there.
So what was the block?
The block, as she figured out later, was that she was mentally rehearsing everything she wanted to say in Portuguese first, forming the point, carefully translating, double-checking grammar.
Ah, the internal translation loop.
Exactly. And by the time she was ready, the conversation had often just moved on. Her brain was so busy with translation, she didn't have much mental space left to react quickly or jump in dynamically.
So what was her aha moment?
It came when she was just watching a native English-speaking colleague. This guy was just effortlessly explaining really complex technical stuff, and she suddenly realized he's not translating. He's thinking directly in English.
Right.
And recognizing that pattern in herself, that was the crucial first step for her to actually start changing those internal habits.
That's a great example because it shows how identifying this reliance on L1 translation shifts the problem, doesn't it? It goes from this vague feeling of, oh, I'm just not fluent enough, to a specific actionable habit. Okay, I'm still translating too much.
Yeah, exactly. And habits, well, we can work on changing habits.
Absolutely. So you've done your internal audit. You got a better sense of whether that L1 translation engine is still humming away in the background. Now, let's get practical. How do we actually start rewiring our brains?
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
But also where you'll start seeing real progress.
Yeah, training your brain like this, it's like building any new skill. It takes consistent effort. You got to start small, manageably, and then kind of gradually ramp up the challenge.
No magic bullet, unfortunately.
No, definitely not. But these strategies, if you practice them regularly, they will steadily build those new neural pathways and weaken the old translation-dependent ones.
Okay, strategy number 1. We like to call this the internal monologue shift, basically. Start talking to yourself.
Okay.
In English. Inside your head.
Right, inside your head. Okay. That sounds maybe a little strange at first.
It does. But it's incredibly effective and actually pretty easy to do anywhere. You're just consciously narrating your daily life, your surroundings, your thoughts, your plans, all to yourself in English.
Okay, so like simple stuff to start.
Yeah, totally simple. As you go about your day, just describe what you're doing in English silently. Okay, morning time, making coffee, opening the cupboard. Where are those beans? Got them. Pouring the water now.
Or describing your environment. Sky's blue today, birds are singing out there, my neighbor's watering his plants again.
Even just describing your thoughts. Need to remember that bank call later. What's for lunch? Just keep that internal chatter going in English.
And the key is starting small, right? Maybe just 5-10 minutes a day, during your commute maybe, or while cooking.
Perfect times. Or taking a walk. Then, as it feels less weird and more natural, just gradually increase the time and maybe the complexity. You can start thinking through decisions, summarizing articles you read, planning your weekend, all silently, all in English.
Okay, I like that. Gradual build-up.
And here's a fun little tip, just to make it less like homework. Try having mock debates with yourself, in English obviously, on really silly topics.
Like what?
Like, should I watch a comedy or a drama tonight? Well, on one hand, I could really use a laugh. But on the other, I heard great things about that new drama. It just makes the practice a bit more engaging, you know?
Yeah, okay, I can see that. All right, strategy 2, go English to English. This means essentially ditching the bilingual dictionary, or at least relying on it way less.
Right, when you hit a new English word, that instinct is often just to quickly look up the translation in your own language. We want you to try and resist that urge.
So what's the alternative?
Start using English-only learners dictionaries. Things like the Oxford Learners, Merriam-Webster Learners, Longman. They're brilliant for this.
Ah, okay. So you read the definition in English.
Exactly. Read the definition in English. Look at the example sentences also in English. Try to even define the word yourself using other English words you already know.
Okay, let's take an example. Say you stumble across, I don't know, pernicious.
Good one. Okay, instead of just finding the L1 word for it, an English learner's dictionary might tell you something like having a very harmful effect or influence, often in a way that's gradual or not easily noticed.
Ah, okay. That gives you a much richer feel for it, doesn't it? More nuance than just a single translated word.
Way more. And you could even try building like word webs or mind maps around new words, all in English. For pernicious, maybe you link it to harmful, subtle, negative influence, gradual damage, insidious.
I see. So that process forces your brain to make connections within English itself.
Exactly. Strengthening those internal English links instead of always taking that detour through your first language.
Okay, got it. Strategy 3. Label your world. Mentally or maybe even physically.
Yeah, make your immediate surroundings a constant English practice zone.
So just look around you right now.
Yep, right now. Wherever you are, home, office, outside, mentally label everything you see in English. And don't just stick to nouns like desk, chair, tree.
Go beyond nouns.
Yeah, include verbs describing actions like the printer is whirring, the leaves are rustling, or I'm typing. And think about prepositions too, showing relationships. The book is on the table, the picture is above the sofa.
Okay, so turning the environment into a live vocabulary lesson.
Pretty much. And for an extra boost, especially if you keep forgetting the English word for, say, your kettle or something, you can actually use sticky notes for a bit. Physically label things around your home or office. Just focus on stuff you use a lot. Seeing the English word right there on the object really helps cement that connection.
Okay, sticky notes. Might look a bit weird, but could be helpful. All right, next strategy. Dealing with those pauses in conversation. Mastering thinking time fillers.
This is good. It's totally natural, even for native speakers, to need a second to gather your thoughts before replying.
Yeah, you can't always have an instant answer.
Exactly. The key is what you do in that brief pause. Fill it with English phrases rather than defaulting to in your first language or just going completely silent, which can feel awkward.
Right. So arm yourself with a little toolkit of English filler phrases, things that signal, okay, I heard you, I'm processing, I'm formulating my reply in English.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, simple things like, that's a really interesting point, or, let me think about that for a second. Or maybe, well, off the top of my head, or it's tricky to say precisely, but...
Even just, how should I put this? Or, let me see.
Exactly. Those phrases are gold. They keep the conversation flowing in English. They buy your brain those crucial extra seconds to think in English. And honestly, they make you sound more natural and thoughtful instead of just having that dead air while your internal translator is whirring away.
Okay, useful. Strategy 5 is about active processing during immersion.
Right. So when you're consuming English content, listening to podcasts, watching shows, reading articles, don't just be passive. Don't just let it wash over you.
Engage with it actively. How?
Well, for instance, if you're listening to a podcast, maybe like this one,
hopefully,
pause it now and then. Try to mentally summarize the main points you just heard in English. If you're watching a show, try predicting what might happen next, again, in English. After reading an article, take a minute, mentally outline the key arguments in English.
Okay. So you're forcing your brain to actually process the meaning directly in English and then practice forming related thoughts in English too.
Exactly. Rather than just passively decoding the sounds or the text.
We heard about Kenji, remember, the Japanese executive. He found that actively summarizing business podcasts in English, just to himself on his commute, it massively improved his comprehension and his ability to talk about similar stuff fluently in actual meetings later. It was that active mental rehearsal in English that did it.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, strategy number 6, the low pressure power of journaling.
Right. Think of writing as thinking on paper, basically. Keeping a simple daily journal in English can be incredibly helpful.
And the key here is focus on writing your thoughts down as they actually occur to you in English. Don't try to translate from your L1 first.
And don't obsess over perfect grammar initially.
Exactly. Just get the thoughts down in English, maybe a few sentences about your day, how you're feeling, your opinion on something you read or watched. Just get it out.
The beauty of journaling is it's a safe space.
Right.
Low stakes. You can practice putting more complex thoughts together, connecting ideas in English without the pressure of a real-time chat. No one's judging your grammar.
It's a place to experiment and build confidence in formulating thoughts in English.
Okay, and our final practical strategy for today, the full immersion switcheroo digital edition.
This one takes a bit of courage, maybe.
Yeah, go into the settings on your phone, your computer, your main apps, your social media, and switch the operating language to English.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I can imagine that brief moment of panic trying to find the settings menu in English for the first time.
Totally. We even heard that funny story about someone accidentally ordering like 10 kilos of onions instead of 1 when they first switched their shopping app language.
Okay, note to self. Double check the online shopping cart.
Definitely double check the onions. But the real benefit of this digital switcheroo is it forces your brain to function in English for tons of tiny everyday tasks.
Right, you're constantly seeing English vocab for daily life, tech stuff.
And you're processing info, making decisions in English without even really trying to study. It's just a fantastic way to normalize English in your daily routine.
Okay, lots of practical ideas there. And I guess the main takeaway is consistency, right? Don't try to do everything at once.
Absolutely. Pick 1 or 2 that appeal to you. Practice them daily, even just for a few minutes. Get comfortable, then maybe add another one. Slow and steady.
Now, as you actually start doing this, start trying to retrain your brain, it's important to be realistic. You're probably going to hit some bumps in the road.
Oh, for sure. It's not always smooth sailing.
So let's talk about some common challenges and how to handle them, and also how to stay motivated when it feels like hard work.
Good idea. Okay, first hurdle.
Yeah.
The dreaded blank mind moment. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Especially under pressure, your mind just, poof, goes blank.
Yeah. Can't find any words, let alone the English ones you need.
So what do? First thing, take a breath. Try not to panic. That just makes it worse.
Right. Use one of those filler phrases we talked about. Let me think. Buy yourself a second.
And try paraphrasing. Use simpler English words you can access. It's way better to say something clearly and simply than to just freeze up.
You could also ask a clarifying question, couldn't you? Buys you time, make sure you understood.
Good tactic. Okay, challenge 2. Those pesky L1 intrusions. No matter how hard you try, thoughts in your native language are going to pop up sometimes.
Especially when you're tired, right?
Or stressed? Definitely. So when that happens, try not to get annoyed with yourself or discouraged. Just notice it. Acknowledge the L1 thought. You could even mentally say, okay, there's my L1 trying to help.
And then just gently redirect.
Yeah, consciously bring your focus back to trying to think in English. It's a bit like meditation, isn't it? Notice the distraction, acknowledge it without judgment, and gently return your focus. Persistence is key.
Okay. And the third challenge, cognitive fatigue. Let's be real, thinking consistently in a non-native language is tiring.
It really is, especially at the start. Your brain is literally working hard, building new connections.
So it's super important to respect your limits here. Start with short sessions, 10, 15 minutes of internal monologue maybe.
Don't try to force it 204/7 from day one.
No way. That's just a recipe for burnout. Gradually increase the duration as it gets easier. Be patient. Be kind to your brain. It's doing heavy lifting.
Okay, so knowing the challenges helps. But this mental retraining, it's a long game, isn't it? A marathon, not a sprint. How do you stay motivated?
Yeah, that's crucial. One really powerful thing is to keep connecting back to your why. Why are you doing this?
Remind yourself of your goals.
Exactly. Visualize yourself speaking more fluently in those meetings, or chatting easily with international friends, getting your ideas across smoothly without that annoying delay. Link the effort to the reward you're aiming for.
That makes sense. And also maybe notice the small wins.
Oh, absolutely vital. Progress isn't always giant leaps. Often it's tiny improvements. Did you respond just a fraction faster today? Did you naturally use an English filler phrase instead of silence? Did you have a quick internal debate entirely in English?
Celebrate those little victories.
Yes, acknowledge them. They're proof you're moving forward, even if it feels slow sometimes.
What about making it fun? Can that help?
Definitely. Inject fun wherever you can. Link thinking in English to your hobbies. If you're a gamer, think through your strategies in English. Love cooking. Follow English recipes. Narrate the steps to yourself in English. Join online forums about your interests. Make a real effort to think before you type in English.
Yeah, connecting it to things you actually enjoy makes it less of a chore.
For sure. And if you can, try to find a thinking partner. Maybe team up with another advanced learner or find a patient native speaker friend.
And agree to focus on thinking in English.
Yeah. Have conversations where you both consciously try to think directly in English. Maybe you can even gently point out when the other person seems to be translating. That shared goal and support can be really motivating.
Nice idea.
And finally, probably the hardest one, accept the plateaus.
Yes, the dreaded plateau, where you feel stuck.
Exactly. There will be times when you feel like you're just not making any progress. It's completely normal in any kind of learning, especially language and habit change.
So don't get discouraged.
Try not to. Stick with your strategies. Maybe mix things up. Try a different technique for a while. But trust that consistent effort will eventually push you through that plateau. Keep going.
Okay, so wrapping things up then. We've taken a pretty deep dive into this whole idea of training your brain to think directly in English.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We looked at why it's so crucial for hitting that higher C1 plus fluency level, how you can maybe spot if you're still stuck in that translation habit.
Remembering Maria and her meeting struggle.
Exactly. And we went through a whole toolkit of practical strategies you can actually start using today. From internal monologues to ditching the bilingual dictionary, labeling your world.
Active processing, journaling, the digital switcheroo. Lots to try.
And remembering Kenji actively summarizing those podcasts on his commute. Small shifts, big results over time.
It really boils down to that core idea, doesn't it? Consciously moving away from that kind of slow, clunky translation emulator.
Yeah.
And starting to install English as a more native operating system for your thoughts, at least when you need it.
It's definitely not an overnight fix, though. You need to stress that. It's mental exercise, right? A gradual process, building new habits, strengthening those brain pathways.
And there will be moments of frustration. Those L1 thoughts will pop up. You might hit a mental blank sometimes.
And that's okay. It's totally normal. The key is just consistency, being patient with yourself, and acknowledging those small wins along the way.
If we go back to that emulator analogy one last time, by consciously training your brain, you're essentially installing the software directly onto the hard drive.
Nice.
And the result, a system that just runs faster, smoother, and way more efficiently.
So the encouragement really is, start small today. Pick just one strategy we talked about, maybe narrate making your next coffee or your walk home internally in English.
Just try one thing.
Stick with it. Make it a consistent part of your English journey. Because honestly, when you start truly thinking in English, it unlocks this whole other level of communication.
Yeah, it really does.
It becomes faster, smoother, you can be more nuanced, and ultimately it just feels more authentic, a more genuine way to express yourself in English. Train your brain, transform your fluency.
Which leaves us with maybe one final thought for you to mull over. How might consciously shifting that internal chatter into English, even during really mundane daily tasks, subtly start to change your overall perception of, and maybe even your interaction with, the English language itself? Something interesting to consider.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks so much for tuning in for this deep dive. Until our next exploration, keep thinking, keep practicing, and keep moving towards that fluent future you're aiming for.